stand up close to that mic.
We'll put some tape on the floor.
Yeah, these are all like cops and emergency managers. They love yelling at people.
Very directive. So they gave me 5 minutes to talk about some things to consider during the set phase of the Ready, Set, Go. This is the time that we want to, get ready, get in that track stance. We're not quite bolting yet, but we want to be ready for fire season. It's just around the corner. So a couple of topics I'll start with, red flag warnings. So real quick, I think most of you are pretty familiar with the National Weather Service fire weather watches and red flag warnings. You'll get the fire weather watch the day before usually. It may not mature into a red flag warning. And then if the conditions continue and actually come as forecast, they'll call it a red flag. These are going to be conditions like high winds, 25 miles an hour or greater, low humidity, high temperatures, dry fuels, and then a potential ignition source like lightning, although we know that there's many other human-caused ignition sources that are the usual cause of these fires. So when you see that fire weather watch or that red flag warning, it should cue you to take some actions. During the ready phase, you already got your go bag packed. So during this set phase, you want to maybe pull that go bag back out and get it ready for this next year's fire season. My house, I've got 2 kids that are 8 and 10. I have all their clothes and toys and things, from last year in that bag. None of it's going to fit them. I've got to take it all back out, right, and go through it. If you had medications or dog food, change all that stuff out. Get it ready for fire season. Probably the next couple of weeks, you want to have it maybe, in your living room. That's where I keep mine ready to go so that if I had to leave, it's there. So other things to be thinking about on a red flag day, if we do actually see a red flag day here in the next month or two, but we definitely will see them this summer. Park your vehicle out so that you can, drive out. You're not backing up your driveway when it's time to leave. Have that go bag ready on a red flag day. Make sure you know how to open your garage door so that you can, pull that handle, right? If the motor's not working, because what comes oftentimes with red flags, public safety power shut off, right? Power is going to be off. Maybe open that garage door ahead of time. Make sure you have a full tank of gas. Make sure you know where your pets are and you have a plan to scoop them up and get their food and their leashes and all that stuff. And I'm sure Pat will talk a little bit about the importance of that because our pets are like our family members and we don't want to leave without them during a fire. Make sure that you're not doing anything to contribute to the fire risk, whether it be mowing, running a chainsaw, weed whacker, dragging chains along the highway. We don't want to be starting fires on red flag days because that's when they'll get out of control, right? Those are the days that we see the wildfires. Those are the days that we see the mega fires. So make sure that you're not burning. That should be kind of a pretty clear. And like the chief talked about, the burning season is going to likely close anyway. So we shouldn't be burning on red flag days. We already talked about making sure you have enough food, medication, and water to get you through 1 week. Flashlight, radio, batteries. Consider your backup power sources if there is a public safety power shut off, things like a generator. Think about ice in a cooler if you lose your fridge. Couple of quick things I'll cover since I've only got 5 minutes. The Find Your Five program, if you haven't heard about that, this program is encouraging residents to find 5 people that you can communicate with on a red flag day about your plan. And then also during an evacuation, if you have to leave. So these should be people down the street from you, maybe the next town over, maybe the next county over, and perhaps somebody even outside the state. And you want to create this network and you have them all maybe as a text thread on your phone or an email group. You let them know, hey, it's a red flag day. There's a fire today. I'm going to go to the Kmart parking lot and I'm going to bring my pets and, I'm going to make sure to check in on Susie down the street. And then if you actually leave, you message them again. Hey, I made it out. I've got to Kmart or I'm leaving now. And you check in with those 5 people. So I would encourage you to set that up. We've already talked about having your go bag ready. And then the last thing I'll encourage you to do during the set phase is to dust off that evacuation plan. Things change. Make sure that you're practicing these plans. You should have at least 3 ways out. Like we've heard, scout your route so that you can find your way out. And I'll stop there. I won't go into the details of the evacuation plan because for that we have Lieutenant Sean Scales from the Sheriff's Office to talk about some evacuation planning tools and some other considerations as you work through your evacuation plan.
Newly in charge of OES, making lots more money now.
Congratulations on the
Yeah, thanks for
arbitrary
promotion,
and,
Scott. I really appreciate it.
ill-advised promotion.
Holy cow, I don't want his job. It'd be so scary. Susan's going to pull up my presentation here, but it is good to see some folks in person. Some of you I haven't seen for years. Pat, holy cow. Susan, you're no longer a small little face on a computer screen. So good to see everyone.
I can't find my control thing to share the screen. There you go, thank you.
What you're seeing on the slide in there. Oh, maybe right off the-
There we-
And if we go to the beginning. All right, so one more slide, please. Go forward. Here we go. All right, so we've sort of covered the basics. Basically, this presentation really should have said something along the lines of go to the Firewise Coalition website because all the information is, a lot of it's already there. You guys are more prepared than most folks. We all know that. But there's a few things that you can pull out. And frankly, just talking about these things is what gets people thinking about it as we head into fire season. So knowing your zone, we all know what that is. Zone Haven was a tool brought to us a couple years back. It's been somewhat of a game changer across the industry, and it's getting a lot of growth in California and beyond. We're pretty lucky to have it. Signing up for Code Red, we all know that one as well. Identifying your routes. So what you see there is a demonstration you'll see, actually won't see today because we can't get the video to play. But basically it's a view of possible routes leaving a particular area. That's not a big surprise, right? We all want to find multiple ways. The big thing I always hear is, I only have one way out. That's a tough one. We can do a lot of things, but we can't make roads where they don't exist now without a lot of work and a lot of planning. There are certain communities in this area that there is only one way out. We recognize that. That's why when it comes to preparedness, you guys got to be on your toes. You really got to be paying attention on those high weather days and just any other day. Don't wait for a red flag warning to sort of get prepared. Be prepared now. The only thing I really disagree with on Paul and what he said is that as we get into fire season, I'd say we're here. There's a fire right now today, over 100 acres burning in Winters. Pat just told me about. Right? So these things happen any time of year.
Town of Washington Saturday.
These things do happen. I was very pleased with what Chief Wallen said in regard to a little bit more at ease. Chief Wallen has a very realistic outlook on the threat we all face up here, but don't let that put you, don't let off. Look for more than one way out. That's not rocket science. What you want to do, next slide, please, is once you've identified these routes, you can take a map book, you can take mapping software. There's tons of different tools out there. MapQuest, Google, you name it. There's literally dozens of them out there. But that doesn't get you everything. Once you've identified your potential routes, you need to drive them. That's your homework. The other thing is they change. Winter to summer, as Scott was saying earlier, there's a lot of routes right now that might be muddy. People can put up gates on private roads. All those things exist. And I can guarantee you that, you can't really see it in here, but maybe you can see it in the presentation, that gate that you see on the left picture there does not show on any map. If you go to Google, that will show it goes right through. I've seen roads that take you through creeks. I've seen roads online, roads that take you through people's houses, private property, you name it. I think we've all had those times when the GPS tells us to go somewhere and it ends up the wrong place. I was reading a story the other day about a drunk that drove down some stairs because GPS told him to go down there. So don't always follow your GPS. Drive your routes like your life depends on it, because it could. That's a simple case. Back one slide, please. The picture on the right, once you've identified your routes and you've driven that road and there are no gates and there are no big barriers, boulders, logs that people drag down as a barrier on the road, that road on the right looks pretty narrow. What can you fit down there? So if you're the type of person who wants to drag your fifth wheel when you evacuate, can it fit down that road? That particular road, one flat, one vehicle stalled, there's your barrier. And that's not a barrier on the road that when you first drove it, right? Things can change in a situation. Next slide, please. What do you do about gates? That's a tough one. Why do people put up gates? To keep people out. There's lots of reasons. Privacy, security. If you've got a house that's close to a road and you're tired of having to wash your car every week, all those kinds of things. You can't keep your windows open because the dust is coming in from people driving too fast down private roads. These things happen. work with your neighbors, work with the people in your neighborhoods to try and get those things open in it before an emergency. Have a plan in place. You can set up multiple locks or whatever the situation is, work it out amongst yourselves and amongst the people in your neighborhood, because once again, your life could depend on it. Road conditions, as I mentioned, can change. They can change during an emergency. They can change due to weather. They can just change because of traffic. Emergency vehicles coming in. Once again, if you have those heavy vehicles, I would hate for your house or your neighborhood or for somebody to lose their life because an emergency vehicle can't get in because people are trying to get out and they block those roads. By all means, get out, but really consider when you're evacuating how important the things are that you're bringing with you. During the campfire, we saw trailers ditched in the middle of the roadway. I saw somebody put their RV into neutral and push it out into the street because they didn't want it to burn with their home, creating a roadblock for all of us who were driving around there. Right? Emergencies bring out the best and worst in people. That's some of the worst. Next slide, please. Ladris. So Ladris is a product that we've worked on pretty hard. Steve Monahan worked really hard on it, suggests as a project as well. And it's a couple of local kids who are doing way better things at 22 than I was. And they've come up with a program that aggregates a lot of data. And what it does, it pulls data from county data, from parcels. It pulls data from Zone Haven. All our zones are built into this map. It also pulls traffic data and all those kinds of things and puts it in one place so that all you have to do is select your residence. You type in your address, you type the destination you're going to, and it will give you an evacuation time. This is just an estimate. When you guys get to trying it, should be live in the next 2 weeks to a month or so. When you get to trying it, understand that it is just an estimate. But it gives you a sliding scale of as more and more people get on the road, your evacuation time gets longer and longer. That's what we would expect. And when it goes forward, I would like everybody to try it out. Bear in mind, it's a new product, but it gives you sort of a game plan for going forward. The other thing it does is it shows you every single parcel that is in that evacuation area. And they're represented by a little pink dot. And you'll be amazed at how many houses you never even knew were there. And those people are going to be trying to leave at the same time as you are. Each one of those little pink dots represents in Nevada County an average of 2 residents per dot in this case, or per parcel. That's 2 people that are going to be doing the same thing as you at that time. So take all those things into consideration when you're trying to evacuate. Let me scroll to the next slide, please. And one more, since the video is not going to play. So last steps, know your route, identify all of those, drive your route, look for those barriers. Don't take the same way home every day. Take a different way to work, take a different way to the grocery store. You know how to get to the grocery store from your house the same route you drive every day. Take a different route. May take you more time. Drive at different times of day, drive at different times of year, drive it in different vehicles. All those things come into play. Print your route. Once you've got your routes identified, print it out, keep it in your car. Remember to update it if you choose a different route, have it ready to go. Train the family members in your home on that route. What if you're not the one driving? What if you're not home? Your spouse is home. Make sure everybody in your home who can drive knows that way out. Print your zone map. If you go to readynevadacounty.org, under the preparedness bucket, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do as you prepare for a fire. What we've done is we put together a county map which has all of the zones on there, and you can take it with you. You can keep it right in your car, keep a copy in your house. It's a good tool. Let others know your route. If you're going to take an unusual route somewhere in an emergency, why not share it with your 5? They should all know where you're going. In the event you don't show up, maybe that's a place we can look for you. Keep all those things in mind. Prepare. And the biggest one, I can't say it enough, is leave early. And when a fire's going on, go grab dinner, go grab lunch, a cup of coffee, whatever. My parents live in Reading, get evacuated at least a couple times a year. I remember when they first started, it was a huge thing for them to evacuate. They'd pack everything up. It would take hours and hours and hours. Now it's 5 minutes because they've decided, you know what, the stuff's just not worth it. That's it.
Lieutenant, can you just reiterate some comments that ladders is a pre-planning tool, not
Yeah.
used during the.
Yeah, correct. So one of the things you'll go through when you try it out is we made sure you have to check a box saying, don't use this in an emergency. It is a pre-planning tool. It's even called the Evac pre-planner. It is not what you want to pull up when you've just got a code red saying leave now. That's not the time to do this. The time to do that stuff is right now, right? Just like we drive our routes, we get everything ironed out before the season. That's the time to go on Ladris as well. So, and once again, you'll be able to access that on the radiantnevadacounty.org dashboard. It should be up in 2 weeks to a month or so. Anything else?
Good stuff.
Okay.
We appreciate it, Lieutenant Scales. Thanks to both you and Paul for those great reminders, especially Paul's reminder that, you know, the clothing in our go bag pre-pandemic might not be great post-pandemic. Really, really appreciate that. Thanks so much. Up next, we have Sergeant Dennis Haack from Nevada County Sheriff's Office. Thanks for being with us.
All right. Well, like you said, my name is Dennis. I'm a sergeant with the Sheriff's Office, and one of my roles is that I supervise the search and rescue team that we have in Nevada County. So a lot of people, when I talk about that and what it has to do with fire, is they say, what does search and rescue have anything to do with fire? So search and rescue in Nevada County is made up of around 120 operational volunteers whose main focus is search and rescue, but they also support a lot of operations of the Sheriff's Office, as many people saw during the large snowstorm that we had. So search and rescue guys have become a huge part of our evacuation coordination with the Sheriff's Office. The way they do this is that they are really good at real-time mapping. And so what this does is it creates a system for the Sheriff's Office to create accountability for our deputies and cooperating partners so we know where they are. And then it helps us to track our progress in evacuations with real-time mapping. The other thing that the SAR folks are really good at is creating an incident command structure and maintaining it. So they help us to keep that structure and maintain it throughout the incident. The other role that I play with the Sheriff's Office is I am the LEMA coordinator, and LEMA stands for the Law Enforcement Mutual Aid System in the state of California. And basically what that means is that if an agency, the incident that they're responding to exceeds their operational ability, then they can reach out to neighboring agencies for assistance. So in our region, oftentimes the first folks that we reach out to are, say, Yuba County and Placer County. And as we've seen in the River Fire and in the Jones Fire, those agencies are more than willing to show up with large amounts of people. So the question I get related to the most, and I believe the true reason that I was here to talk to you guys today, is kind of about structure safety, the safety of your homes while you are evacuated, because that is a concern for some people, and it either causes them to be delayed in evacuating, or possibly they don't want to evacuate at all. So I went back to the statistics related to the River Fire. And as a result of the River Fire, we had one burglary report come from one house while it was vacant. That was reported to the Sheriff's Office. So for me to have that information, it had to have been reported. But I found one burglary that took place of an evacuated residence. The reason why those numbers are so low, and then I want to kind of give you confidence in evacuating your house sooner than later, is that when these incidents happen, we swarm the area with law enforcement. And while the initial response may consist of the Nevada County Sheriff's Office, Grass Valley, Nevada City, Forest Service law enforcement, state parks, we're going to put out that mutual aid request through the state, and we're going to ask for other agencies to come and assist us. And it's going to be twofold how they assist us. The first way is they're initially going to assist us with the evacuations. That's our first priority, is to get everybody out. And then we know that as areas are evacuated, that they become open for people to burglarize or to steal, and that's a legitimate concern. So once the areas are evacuated, we flood them with law enforcement. Typically, for example, the River Fire, on the first night after the evacuations, you probably had 5 times as many law enforcement in the area of the river fire evacuation than exist in the entire county on duty all at one time. We had a ton of people from those cooperating agencies. The reason why I tell you this is we maintain that throughout the evacuations and with roving patrols of agencies that are coming up to help us out. In the same way that we go when, say, the Dixie Fire, Caldor Fire is going, we go help with those evacuations and maintain security as well. So the point is if security is a concern for you, first you've got to weigh those items versus your safety and getting out. And then the other thing is you can rest assured that there's a significant law enforcement presence in those evacuated areas. That's all I've got. Thanks.
And hey, before you go, Sergeant Haack, part of that concern is also the evacuation tags. So they speed up the activities of law enforcement and search and rescue and everyone else who are leading evacuations. Is that a target on my house saying, please rob me?
So the houses aren't going to be able to be specified by those tags because any house that we go to, whether the person who left that house marked it as evacuated themselves, or say myself or a CHP officer or Grass Valley's gone up to, we're all going to mark those addresses. So in all reality, every single residence on a road will be flagged as evacuated. So your house shouldn't stand out amongst others.
So I shouldn't worry about hanging that thing from the front door of the mailbox. Right?
Nope.
Cool. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here. All right. And our last speaker on the topic of evacuation, Pat Ehlers, to give us some tips for taking care of our fuzzy little friends.
Thank
And
you.
and the big ones.
And the big ones, yeah.
And the really
Can't
big ones.
forget the big ones. Okay, you've heard a lot about your go bags. Your babies need go bags too. So you're going to want to make sure that they have their food, their water. Cats need their cat litter. You need paper to make cat pans out of, tape to close up the, make it the pans for you. So we're going to be going over that just a tiny bit because we want to concentrate on how to prepare to evacuate. Okay. Ask your neighbor, like they've already mentioned, at least 5. I'm going into town today. Can you get my animals out safely if there's a fire and I have to evacuate? And when you go into town, I'll be happy to do it for you also. This way you don't have to worry about your little ones. Now, speaking of little ones, your cats will hide on you. So the first sign of fire or smoke, pick the little ones up, put them in the bathroom. This goes for your little dogs too, because they have a habit of crawling underneath the bed and hiding and you can't get to them. You have a matter of minutes on some fires to get out. You don't have a half hour or an hour to try to get Fluffy out from underneath the bed. You may end up with abscesses, especially with cats, but it's really easy to take care of. So I wouldn't worry about that. So your animals, you want to make sure they have their medication. Your food, if you have an animal that has an allergy to food, make sure you pack it. We're always there to help you if you need help. You're going to want to make sure you have water bowls. And one of the best bowls that I have found in lightweight is your prepared meals. It has your chicken or your tri-tip, whatever the case may be. They're lightweight. You can toss them when you don't need them. And they stack nicely and they're not heavy in your go bag. And you need at least a couple of days of food for each animal. Oh, don't forget your can openers, because a lot of them, listen to your radio. Your local radio station will tell you where the fire is. Your code red is so very important to have. It will tell you if you have to evacuate. It will tell you if the fire is close to your home. Don't hesitate to put that on. For your large animals, these are special considered animals because they are the hardest to get out of a fire area. They're not as easy to pack up and put in a car, though some goats and sheep will be happy to go into a car. But your horses, your cattle, your llamas, you're going to want to get them in the trailer and get them out sooner than later. As soon as you suspect there's a fire, get them out. Don't wait to be told, because it's going to take longer. And then if everything turns out to be all right and you can go back in, it's a fire drill. You've learned from that lesson what to do next time to make it better and more smoother for you. You need to have some type of ID for these animals, whether it's microchipped. Your horses, please do not put your phone number on the side of a horse. It will be stolen in a heartbeat. You need to hide your phone number underneath the mane. Now my horse, I put nail polish right underneath her mane. No one can see it. But we've learned from the East Coast and a couple other counties that people will walk in and say, I was told my horse was brought in. My phone number is area code such and such, and then rattle off the rest of the numbers. The horse is gone. Now there's another little trick. You can also put it on the hoof. It's not as seen as easily, but I like underneath the mane unless you crop your mane up close. Take a picture of you and your horse or your large animal. Just take a picture with your cell phone and then you've got it made. My babies fill up my phone, so they're not going to get lost. With your truck and trailer, think about during fire season to back your truck up to your trailer. I can attest for a fact that once there's a fire in your area, your brain is gone. You have no more common sense in the world. Back it up, and then this way, all you have to do is hook the trailer up to your truck and you leave. You don't have to fight trying to get it back up. So do it and think about it. Make sure your gates are closed. These are especially for large animals, so they don't go back into their barn. If they go back into the barn, that's their safety zone. They're going to die of smoke inhalation. During the 49er fire, and I have a 20-minute presentation, so I'm trying to condense it greatly. A goat farmer took care of his field beautifully. All the goats ran in and they all died from smoke inhalation. That's because they left the gates open. Don't do that. Close the gates behind them. This way they can't go in for safety. My girl does it. It's raining, so she runs in because she doesn't like the rain. So if it was smoke, she would run in and she'd have smoke inhalation. And that's kind of in the nutshell, as fast as I could do.
We appreciate it. If I could just add a lesson from the campfire, because it was an extended evacuation. There were many outdoor animals ranging from chickens to llama, emu, and
the chickens are the #1 burn victims. I was over there working it.
Yeah. So before, in a fire that big, there was not enough between the two animal evac agencies having just water outside, water dishes filled.
You have to be careful with water because if the ash gets in your water, it can contaminate. The water that goes into ponds are contaminated. So you have to bring in bottled water and put it in there. You cannot rely on, oh, there's a pond here, that's fine. Because it will be contaminated with toxins. And what happens a lot with these animals, if it's okay, because I belong to the VMAC medical side or the veterinary field in campfire. What happens is that once the fire is gone and you have the burn and it starts raining, it turns into lye, and then all the little babies have burn paws. And you have to be careful. And that gives another thing. When you go back home, and we're at May 7th at the Root Center, we'll be happy to go through everything for you. You need to walk your property because there's trees that have burnt down below the ground, and your large animals in particular can fall down, break a leg and get burnt. And you don't want that. We'll be happy to teach you how to prepare more on May 7th. We'll be there from 10 to 4, and we're doing microchipping. So bring your babies, small animals. The horses are too big for me to microchip, I'm sorry to say. They're taller than me. So only small animals. So we're happy to help in any possible way. And the chickens are our #1 burn patients and waterfowl.
Well, thank you for being
Thank you.
here, and thanks to all the speakers hitting this topic of evacuation. My challenge for the group tonight is the same thing that I throw out nearly every month, where instead of reflecting on, the 30 points you heard tonight that you've perhaps heard before, find a couple you haven't. And then for the 30 that you have heard before, don't just sit back and say, I already know this, really challenge yourself and say, and ask yourself, am I acting on it? And have I really done all those things? So with that, we will transition from the county executive office. We have Caleb Dardick here to discuss or to solicit for a solicitation of Firewise community priorities for the time ahead. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, and thank you all for being here, and hopefully I'm standing far enough back. I just want to really express my appreciation and admiration for all the speakers and for all of you for the work, that you're doing to make the community safe and to get information out that allows people to be informed and make good decisions. So much of the Ready Nevada County program is focused on individual action, individual stewardship of your properties. What I want to talk about tonight is, and I have a slide up, says Ready Nevada County. This is called Preparing for the Future. And I want to focus on and engage you in a conversation, and those of you online, if you could use the chat and we'll pull from that, is what is it that we need to do as a community that's beyond what we can do as individuals, right? There's so much we can do. Pack our go bags, sign up for Code Red, clear our property, be responsible, take care of our animals. But there are some things in our community that we have to do collectively, and we have to summon up the resources to implement them. So that's the conversation we want to have tonight. If you could go, Susan, please, to the next slide. So I think we are all very familiar at this point that something has changed, right? When I first started working for the county 2.5 years ago, when we talked about emergency preparedness, we were really talking about wildfires. Even though we knew we had an all hazard approach and that was important to our work, and that there were the possibility of floods and, even earthquakes, right? We were all focused on wildfires. But what's happened in the last 2.5 years, we've had two wildfires right here in the county. We've had lots of small fires, but we've also had the winter storm, right? 2 weeks for some people with no power. We've had heat events. We have seasonal drought. We have all sorts of situations. We had a pandemic. So the idea of emergencies really has to be viewed broadly. One of the things that Paula shared with me is that the emergency center used to be activated maybe a couple days a year. That was just normal for decades. In the last 3 years, it's been activated more than 50 days in a season. We're looking at another 50-day season in 2022. So clearly, climate change, all the other things that are coming together, the way we live is changing. And so how do we deal with sort of having one challenge after a next for a sustained amount of time? So the catchphrase that we have here for preparing for the future is, it means coming together as a community to set big goals and securing the necessary ongoing resources to make them a reality. We have been in the county extremely successful with grant writing, huge success with our partners at CAL FIRE, and it brought in millions of dollars for large-scale fuel breaks for roadside vegetation. But those of us who have been in local government for a long time know that grants follow a cycle of boom and bust, and that you can't do long-term sustainable planning based purely relying on grants. And many times grants will pay for a project, but they won't pay for the ongoing maintenance and the sustainability that we know is needed. So one of the ways that local communities deal with that and fill in those periods between grants is through revenue measures, right? And taxation. Now, nobody likes that. So we just figured, let's do a poll. So next slide, please. And this is impossible to read even in the room, and I'm sure on the screen, but basically we last fall conducted a 22-minute poll with 999 Nevada County voters, likely voters, and saw that in the areas of, asking questions about wildfire prevention, reducing flammable brush, improving evacuation rates, enforcing against transient camping, maintaining emergency systems, helping seniors and disabled with their properties, that if we were to suggest a 0.5-cent sales tax countywide for these types of purposes, the community responded about 67% affirmative, which if you put together, the number of people who are definitely yes with those probably yes, and that gave us a sense that, wow, maybe in Nevada County, we're actually at a moment where we can have a serious conversation about this type of revenue measure. So that was important information. Next slide. But if we're going to come up with if we're going to look for funding from the voters, we need to make sure that we have a menu of needs that we're addressing that is really local and that reflects the best thinking of our leadership. So we convened, the staff convened our county departments, our this community development agency, our Office of Emergency Services, our sheriffs, and then reached out to some of our fire districts, CAL FIRE, Consolidated, Truckee Fire Protection District, and then met with the city managers and city leadership of Truckee, Nevada City, and Grass Valley, soliciting their best ideas. And tonight, we also want you to participate in that, because what we want to do is put together a really smart menu and prioritize menu, because you can't do everything, and see what that looks like. So following Paul's advice, we use the sort of FEMA wheel of planning and preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery, and ask for people's projects along those lines. So next slide. And what we heard and we got lots of ideas, and we're still, as I'm saying, soliciting ideas, but I would say the sort of big buckets was planning. We need evacuation plans. We need our community wildfire prevention plans updated. We can't rely on grants, waiting and applying for a grant to keep these plans updated. That's what's happening right now. We apply, and the clock keeps ticking. We'll keep looking for grants always, but if we start getting up to time and our plans need to be updated every 5 years, we're going to have money to be able to do that sort of planning on an ongoing basis. So that's a big piece. The other is activities like this. We're reaching out to dozens, if not hundreds. Paul and his team are doing all sorts of community events, as he mentioned. But what if we were to expand that, reach even more people, do even more events? Because we know that an educated and empowered public is going to be the first defense in taking care of our communities. So really looking at a robust community engagement and outreach plan. Next slide, please. So mitigation, this is an area that seems like it's the very best investment of the public dollar in energy. Paul gave me this graphic from FEMA that says for every dollar invested, it saves $6 on disaster recovery. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So this is a good investment, and the type of ideas that are coming in. Well, the first thing that everyone says is don't do a project that isn't going to have a maximum benefit, right? Let's do projects that have maximum positive impact. So many of the things we've talked about in these meetings over the years, let's improve evacuation routes. Let's widen those roads, put in turnouts, deal with signage. Let's move the hazardous vegetation, 10 or more feet back along the county right away. Green waste programs. This was a huge success following the winter storm, 10 days, all those tons. People have been saying, and I was out there, signing people in too. And it was like, could you do more of these? What if you did this year round? So one idea is let's have year-round disposal sites that are either free or low cost, no cost on both ends of the county. So these are ideas that are coming forward and we're pricing out and putting together. So lots of ideas up there. You got fuel breaks. Let's not only do fuel breaks, and maybe, we keep getting grants from CAL FIRE and then we use our money to maintain them. Something like that, right? Because the last thing you want to do is put millions of dollars into a fuel break and 4 years later find that the Scotch broom has come back. So we need to be thinking, take on a project, commit to maintain it. Helping our, we live in a county with an aging population, many people with disabilities. Let's make sure that we're helping those folks because they may not physically be able to use a chainsaw or may not be able to afford on a fixed income. Let's get some grants out there to help our vulnerable folks. A lot of people are very concerned about people camping in the woods. How can we increase our outreach, our partnership with law enforcement and social services to make more contacts, get people out of unsafe conditions and on their way to a more stable housing situation? And then again, there are so many grant opportunities right now. Let's not miss any because we lack matching funds and haven't identified a source of matching funds. So again, another opportunity that people said, make sure that you're thinking about that. So another slide, Susan. Response, obviously this is critical, right? There's an emergency. We need to be able to have an appropriate response in this area. We're thinking about, because the county itself is not in the fire business, what is it that the county could be a unique contribution? Shared resources, hand crews. Chief Wallen was talking about maybe having less fire hand crews from Washington Ridge. Maybe what we need are some locally controlled hand crews that can be doing mitigation work year round. And then when there's a fire, go out and work with the first responders on the line. Other areas around responses, as you talked about, the need to have sheltering capacity for our animals and for our livestock, and obviously for people as well. And, we've been talking to Freed and other social service providers who work with the disabled, the type of personal preparedness planning, that sort of direct assistance and safety net for those who need it. And one more slide. And then recovery. We've been so lucky with our local fires, but we've seen the havoc that has taken places in other parts of the state. River fire, I think we lost 58 homes. We were able to actually raise $250,000 in a couple of days with local philanthropy. But if the scale is 10 times that, it's a whole nother thing. So being able to put resources in place where we are thinking about recovery, lessons from Sonoma County, Steve talks about a lot. How can we have that readiness to do post-event cleanup to help people get their property in a situation where they can return and rebuild, giving them the support, expediting permits, creating opportunities to house people, recovery funds. A big thing that we learned from Butte County was the importance of ongoing case management for the people who lost their homes, because navigating FEMA and just getting your life back in order can take years. And there's still active case management from the Camp Fire in Butte County. And so that's something for us to be thinking about as well. And then as we saw with the big Stormageddon, right? Cal OES and FEMA were there to help us, but there's still a local match that I think was 25%. So having that resources locally to be able to match that federal and state assistance is required. And being flexible in this recovery area, because, maybe one year it's quiet and then maybe another year it's really, really heavy. Next slide, please. So this is where I want to open it up to you, and maybe Paul, you could help me take notes. I'll take notes as well. And those of you who are on Zoom, if you can put it in the comments, and then we can get the comments later. But what are your priorities? When you think about the things that we need to do as a community, what are those items? If you could send those to me, we could talk about it now. I put my email up there. Oh, not yet. My email's in the next slide. We have a quick survey, 1 question survey. It'll take you 30 seconds. It's at readynevadacounty.org/future. And it basically asks you to prioritize a list of items in what you think is the right order. And then there's a place for you to fill in whatever it is that you think is not on the list. So we really encourage you to do that. We got a few hundred already, but I'd love to see a few thousand people participate in this survey. Those of you in the room tonight, if you could do it before you leave, that would be great. And then share this with your friends. Those of you who are leaders in the Firewise communities here in Nevada County, please share this with your lists. And if you'd like to have this type of session too, where we sit down and I don't feel quite so rushed to hit the time, but we can talk and actually have even more of a dialogue, we would welcome that and accept your invitation to come and sit down with a small group. Welcome that. So thank you for jumping ahead. Yeah, my name is Caleb Dardick. I'm the assistant CEO in the CEO's office, and my email is caleb.dardick@co.nevada.ca.us. Now I'd like to open it up to you with whatever time is remaining.
You got 5 for sure.
Okay, we got at least 5 minutes. All right, are we seeing anything in the chat, Bob?
No, not yet.
Not yet. This group is chatting about everything but that, huh?
They are doing a little chatting, it's true.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam. What's that? Yes, Sam, please.
Something that our Firewise group has encountered, and I think others have too, where you're not in a position to write grants and you're also in the role trying to find an agency partner to work with. And then there's, we hear there are boatloads of money out here and yet there's a gap.
So I'm going to repeat that question from the community. It was related to, there's a lot of grants out there, but as a small community, a Firewise community, we just don't have the resources. So how do we bridge that gap and go after some of that funding?
You got it.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for repeating that. Great question. That's definitely one of the things that, first of all, right now, work with our OES staff. And so especially because there's opportunities to coordinate. Sometimes when we look at it through our lens, we're only seeing part of the potential. And then if we look at a larger scale, there might be even more opportunities to partner. I know you're working on Deer Creek projects, but Deer Creek runs from north of Nevada City all the way to Lake Wildwood. The Lake Wildwood folks have a real interest in this as well. So work with the OES team. They got great grant writers. And part of what we're talking about with preparing for the future is building up that capacity so that we can do more grant writing, grant management, contracting, and provide those sort of shared services so that we're even more efficient, more effective as a community, because we have a great talent, great imagination and ideas. And you're right, not always, although I'm amazed by how many local groups are able to do these complicated government grants, but I think it's a real opportunity to work collaboratively with the cities, with the county, with the neighborhood groups.
Local hand crews is another thing that is in the chat.
Great. Yeah,
Local
no, we
hand
really
crews.
like, I mean, the idea for local hand crews in this process was originally raised by Captain Turner of, Chief Turner of Consolidated. And it's, and there's getting a lot of head nods from his colleagues, other fire chiefs as well, because it makes sense. You can do year-round mitigation. You can clear brush at people's homes or along roads or critical infrastructure. And then, man, when the alarm goes off, then you're under the direction and command of a local fire chief. Diane.
I just would like to say that the Greenhorn Firewise community already submitted 14 priorities to you, one of which I'd like to underscore, and that is the notion of some kind of a joint powers agreement amongst 4 or 5 neighboring counties to do a biomass plant. When we have all this lumber laying in their front yards that is much bigger than a 75-year-old lady can push by herself, it'd really be great if there was a destination for it.
Yeah, thank you. And I assume now people can hear the question about biomass. There's definitely, that's such a big piece of this. If we're as a community saying, hey, everybody and our neighbor is going to be responsible for maintaining our property and clearing it, especially those of us with larger lots or dealing with trees, we need help getting rid of it. And to do all that work, let's meet each other halfway. The community is going to be clearing the roadside. Then let's create, we saw that people cut brush, loaded it in their car. I saw people with brush in their Prius, bringing it and dropping it off. So if the community is willing to engage at that level, let's make it easy for them. Let's reduce those barriers. Large scale, if we do have a, year-round drop off, this becomes a feeder for biomass, whether it's local or regional, but great ideas, Diane, as always, please.
The other thing, where the microphone is at.
Right behind you, right behind you.
I really,
Hold up, could
really
you-
want
could
to,
you-
I really,
Bring that
really
back.
want to see the county work on incentivizing people to clear their property. So if one of our people or I personally, somebody invests $40,000 in getting their property cleared, can that have some kind of a positive impact on property taxes and or insurance costs? And I realize throwing insurance into the mix means we have to bring in state issues, but so what? Let's do it, because we've got to incentivize people.
Caleb, can I field that real quick?
Please.
So we ran out of time last month. I have an update from Ricardo Lara's office. I'd be happy to connect with you privately on that, though I'm sure everyone's interested. So your too long didn't read version is that the insurance commissioner is working on that. There are a series of things that they have defined, like, 3 different zones around your house that should be cleared. Let me know if you've heard this before. And in doing that, he is trying to make the insurance companies bake that into their rating. So instead of just these big wide rating systems, which will always be there, they will not go away. But in addition to that, giving credit for individual homeowners based on things like those 3 zones, like being part of a larger organization in your neighborhood, i.e. a Firewise community. And if you're active, getting credit for that. The commissioner kind of holds the golden ticket for all carriers in the state. And you have to be signed off and you have to be allowed as an admitted insurer to do business in the state of California. And that is, so it's both the carrot and the stick that the commissioner is trying to use with those carriers. So that's all public information, has nothing to do with my day job. So please go look that up for yourselves.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, certainly the advocacy is an area where I feel that we can work together and support, which is that advocacy at the state and federal level, working with the insurance commissioner and our legislators to, get relief. I think you're absolutely right, whether it's tax relief, insurance relief. This is really hard on all of us. And, someone who had to hire a crane to pull trees out, from around my house, I know something about the bill too. But the incentive part is a big piece, right? And also with, if people are clearing their private roads, I mean, 3/4 of the roads in Nevada County are privately owned. That's a lot of work. So, if we can put together a program of in-kind with homeowners where they cut the brush and stack it, and we come around with chippers, we build the capacity of, say, the Fire Safe Council or other groups like that, more chippers, more hand crews, more people who can meet the community halfway and make this whole thing more sustainable and on a much larger scale. That's really what we're talking about.
I think we got time for one more.
So it's Scott, in the chat, and it's not directly related to this. A lot of comments about communication. People are wondering what happens when there's a power outage, a fire, snowstorm again. How do we communicate? And
so we're gonna refer you to every meeting we've ever had as a coalition. They're all recorded on our website. So there are multiple redundancies, and I'll see if I can answer this in 60 seconds. But no, we're not going to control Comcast. No, we're not going to control PG&E. What you are going to see is through the Office of Emergency Services, 2 different broadcast systems. One you have to sign up for. So if you're not signed up for Code Red, and everyone do that. The second is a push that comes from the county to your phones if phones are working. If phones are not working, please have redundant systems. Many of you have new vehicles that now have satellite communications. Is your phone linked to those so that you can get that? Tune into local radio stations, KNCO, KVMR. If you don't have an emergency radio that's battery powered with backup batteries on you, have one. Have a local plan within your community. Don't rely on the government. So make sure that you have a plan with your neighbors. So if your neighbor wakes up in the night and smells smoke, do they know which window to bang on of your house to wake you up? Do they have ideas? Do you have electronic communications with your neighbors? We've spoke about now 2 different radio systems available at Radio Shack or online through literally Amazon. So that's what's going on for communications. If you'd like details on any of those, again, please go to the website. We have covered this, what might be described as a lot in the past. Yep, and we got LT Scales to share one more thing.
So one thing that we've been working on for actually a couple years now, ARES. Any ARES members in here? Amateur Radio Emergency Services. So that's a group that we've been working with, trying to get an MOU with for the past couple of years. I'm pleased to say that as of last week, it actually was signed off by the ARRL. So next is moving local for signatures. I believe they've given presentations before in front of Firewise for setting up those groups. But what we need is people, right? you guys need to drive this process. The idea being is that it would be a way for them to parrot the messages that we're putting out via code red, right? And email and text and all the stuff that comes along with code red in addition to that phone call. They would parrot that message to the affected community. Plus, it's a two-way street. There's a community in El Dorado County, which through Aries was able to get a message out during the Caldor fire of a lady who was injured. Excuse me, it was a male who had a heart attack. And they had no ability to get out. They had no cell phone service, no wired phone service or anything like that. They utilized Aries to get first responders in there to get them out of that community, out of that situation. But it will require a relatively small investment from those groups. Firewise Coalition is a great source for those people to come together and organize all that. And we'll have more to go on that soon.
And if you're interested in Aries, again, we do have contact information, so you can ask us. You can ask us directly.
Could you send Scott that statement so you could then send it out to us so we could send it out to everybody? What you just said about the area.
Sure.
Because that, I mean, I send it out to all, we have this whole section meter thing going on and we can get it out to our people. And I know there's some folks who are interested in that kind of thing to incentivize them.
Absolutely.
And we also had the presenter from Aries 2 months ago. So if you want to go back, watch that video about the details and how simple it is. It's turn on radio switch, squeeze to talk. It's the walkie-talkie of your childhood, just a lot stronger and more important. So but before we get too far move on, I want to again thank Caleb for being here from the county executive office. Really appreciate your time and you sharing this good work. It's nice to know that, again, as you attend these meetings, you notice every sphere of the community, every aspect of government is here to support you. We have Consolidated, we have CAL FIRE, we have the Sheriff's Office, we have OES, we have the County Executive's Office, we've had elected officials talk here, we have the local radio club in Aries. We've heard from the civilian volunteers of the search and rescue evacuation team. We finally addressed the animals here with Pat tonight. So again, there's a lot of people here who are here to support you, and that's because you guys do so much work, right? If these meetings had 3 people, you know, you wouldn't have this attention, but you are all very active. You've given feedback to OES, the Nevada County Transportation Commission, and now the executive office. So thank you as community members. And we do have a few minutes left here, and most of our speakers are still here. So as related to the topic of evacuation, do we have any follow-up questions for our speakers, or anything to garner from the chat?
Oh, no, nothing from the chat.
I have one more thing I can cover. So related to that, when you're driving your routes,
Even if it's 12 noon, if you're in the thick of a fire, it's going to look like it's dark. It really, really will. Most of the pictures I have from the campfire, I would get there when it was dark just because of time of day, and I would leave when it's dark, having never seen the sun all day. That's how it is if you're really in the thick of an evacuation. So charge your flashlights, even if you're leaving during the daytime, all those things come into play. Those of us who work shift work on graveyard, right? That's when you're using your flashlight a lot. We found we're burning out our flashlights during the day simply because we couldn't see. So just be aware of all those things when you're driving your routes. Be aware of what it looks like at daytime and what it looks like in pitch black night.
Question. Can you wait for the mic?
Sandy Houston with Casaloma Firewise in training. Did we learn any lessons from what happened on Highway 49 with the river fire last year? Relatively small fire for Nevada County, what it could have been from everything we've heard from Chief Matthias. So have we, and can we address what we've learned from the traffic and the amount of accidents that were on 49 last year?
So specific to the traffic and accidents, I will kick it over to the SO.
I'll take a stab at it. I was actually at the IC for that one, so I wasn't on Highway 49. My understanding, a motorcycle accident right at Comby Road and Highway 49. Is that what you're referring to?
I saw at least 3
Yeah.
accidents on 49.
just like every day during commute time, right? There's fender benders, right? Every day, we know if we head southbound on Highway 49, that if it's around 5 o'clock, 5:15 or so, traffic just south of LeBar is going to be backed up from the intersection at Alta Sierra. We know that, and the intersection at LeBar. Like, we know that's going to happen. In an evacuation, whenever you have large amounts of people going one direction, you're going to have accidents without a doubt. Then you throw in panic. Holy cow, right? It's just a recipe for that. We do the best we can with bringing in mutual aid. We try to train our officers that we've got enough people knocking on doors, staff those traffic control points, but they pop up unexpectedly. That's the problem with an incident within an incident, is we don't know when it's going to happen. On the Bennett fire, we had a car into a fire engine right at the intersection of Idaho, Maryland, and Brunswick. Things like that are going to happen. Usually they get mitigated relatively quickly, and we're going to operate based upon the emergency. Like, that's what we have to do with the resources we have. So if I'm not too worried about traffic being backed up 5 miles away from the fire, and I need to concentrate those resources on all the folks who are in the middle of an evacuation, there may be a more important intersection to clear than the one that's 5 miles away. But it is very much a moving target. And when you've got about 5 deputies and a sergeant usually helping out on it, and that's for the county, that's not just for a fire. You're also going to have, usually on a fire, we get mutual aid from Grass Valley, Nevada City. The great thing about having great neighbors like Placer and Yuba County is they'll sometimes auto roll before we even call. But it does take a while to clear those things out. Traffic is very much a concern. I realize I can't give you a great answer.
It's not I'm just, that's one of the things that I hear is, so many people in our neighborhood, well, I'm not gonna leave because I work for the 49.
Yeah,
And I think that's scary.
it is a scary concept, and a lot of that's due to rumors. So for example, I've heard many times of all the people who died on the Skyway. It didn't happen. But I've heard that as a first responder who was in the campfire assisting with evacuations and patrol. I was told that at my morning briefings, and it didn't happen. But rumor control is very much a problem. During the winter storm, we heard about people freezing to death in their homes. That wasn't happening. But the problem is it propagates out on social media, and it becomes much bigger narrative than we could possibly control. And that's where folks like yourselves who are educated on these things can do your best to control those things very much. We do appreciate what you guys offer us, because you guys can then amplify the correct messages.
That's good stuff. And as we transition out, I would just also direct everyone to previous statements around evacuation, that the best way to avoid the traffic is to get out early. You know, be prepared, have everything packed, have everything ready to go, take the advice of those you've heard tonight. And as an organization, we try to keep things fresh. We see all these same faces month after month, year after year. So not a single one of our speakers for tonight's meeting focused on evacuation was at last year's meeting focused on evacuation. So if you're looking specifically for driving tips, we had Police Chief Alex Gamelgard, who gave some tips specific to driving. Before he spoke, I believe it was Chris Riley,
Dressing.
retired fire. Is that how we title
He
him?
was fire.
Speaking about what to wear in case you are, stuck in traffic and need to foot bail and run, which is, again, a very low likelihood scenario. Again, as Lieutenant Scales pointed out, people do get out who go. But go back and watch last year's meeting. It's recorded, it's on the website, and you'll get some different perspectives on evacuation tips, including driving. And then as far as what we can do, I mean, we can't control immediately how wide our roads are, how many lanes there are, and what traffic will be. What we can do is prepare ourselves and learn from others who have been through this in the past. So that's my transition out to tell you that our next meeting is June 7th. Focused on survivor stories. So you heard tonight the official advice from a number of different agencies. Come back next month and hear it directly from people who have lived through these events, what they did right, what they might want to do over on, and how they can and how you can apply that to your own life. So with that, we're going to shut this down officially. I will ask for feedback. So if you can send via our website, some feedback on what worked tonight. We know we had some tech issues, but I think we got some follow-ups and some to-dos for next time. So thank you all for your time and look forward to seeing you soon.
Oh.